you wanna smoke some weed? I'm like, me now? I'm smoking weed, man. That ain't me. Shoot. But then he had left the room and had left a little bit there, and I was like, can I get a little bit of it? You know what I'm saying? And I just got a little bit, and I liked it. And then from there, I just kept smoking weed, and then I got tired of weed, because they don't tell you, after the first time you smoke weed, you don't never get as high as the first time. They don't tell you that stuff, but I ain't care, because I was like, that's how I like it. And I got tired of weed eventually, and I moved over to crack, and then I got tired of crack, and I moved over to cocaine, and I started slowing down, and I started missing practices, and they said they was gonna cut me and cut my scholarship, but it was because they were just hating. They was hating on me. But I ain't care, so I kept running and being real good and stuff. But they cut me off the team and cut my scholarship. I went from crack, cocaine, to start shooting needles in my arm. I started stealing stuff from my mama's house just to get that high, that good feeling in my veins. And then one day I was shooting needles with this dude, and it turns out this dude had HIV, and now I got it. But all I wanted to be is on ESPN. I wanted to be somebody people looked up to. Not going across the country telling people about my diseases, what I don't have anymore. And that's my story. Make wise decisions. Thank you.
I love that performance from Devin. I found it really inspiring because, you know, we heard from him, and you heard what his life was like as a 13-year-old, the amount of stress and pressure and how difficult it was. And yet I look at his performance and I'm like, wow, what could I do with my life? I loved it.
Powerful young man, like I said earlier. Now we're going to go to Phil Dickey, who's an expert in teen stress. He has years of experience working with troubled teens. He's going to provide us some of the do's and don'ts, some of the methods and advice so that we can effectively deal with stress, not only for yourself, but for your loved one as well.
Stress is the body's physical and mental rate that it adjusts to pressure that's placed on it. Many times it's pressure that a person has no control over. Stress is the body's way of reacting to change. One thing to remember is everyone has stress. A lot of times parents may not acknowledge that teenagers don't have stress, because once a person overcomes a situation in their life, that situation loses its power a lot of times to cause stress. So situations that parents may have experienced that are similar to situations their children may be going through, because the parent has overcome that situation and now has new types of stress, they no longer see the old stress as real. The other thing too is to remember that teenagers today are growing up with different types of stress on them than their parents may have had. Today's teenager has the stress of post 911, of worrying about terrorists, of having to perhaps go through security gates when they enter their school, of having to be patted down before they go to concerts. Those are things that probably their parents did not have to go through. Stress cannot be prevented. As I was saying, we don't know how to prevent stress, and to be honest, we don't really want to prevent stress. We want to learn how to manage stress, to acknowledge that there are going to be things in life that are going to cause us stress, know how to respond to it, and also to recognize that stress is not always wanted or needed, but there are also other times where we need stress in order to function.
How can I best deal with my stress?
There are several do's and don'ts related to stress management. The first thing that a person should do is acknowledge that they have stress. The body is an amazing instrument, and it needs to be told sometimes what it's experiencing. If I tell myself I'm feeling stress, I then can respond to it. There was a book out a long time ago called The Road Less Traveled, and one of the rules that the book talked about was life is difficult. However, once a person admits that life is difficult, it's no longer as difficult for them. We actually transcend or go past what we thought was true and experience a different level. The same with stress. If you want to respond to stress, it's very important that a person tells herself, I am doing this activity to lessen my stress. Many times teenagers or people will say they like to watch TV to relieve stress. If you don't tell your body that you're watching TV to relieve stress, you probably will not get as much stress relief from watching it. If you physically sit down in front of the TV set and say, I know I'm stressed, I'm going to watch TV to relieve my stress, you'll be amazed at how much more the stress will be relieved. One of the things not to do is you don't want to drink large amounts of caffeine. That's very important. You don't want to use some type of alcohol or other type of drug to relieve stress. You don't want to do any type of negative activity to relieve stress. It's very important.